A symphony in full song is many things. Racing 2 is a symphony, one of color, speed, and daring. Like great music, it stirs the soul. It's led by the great masters. And as with any performance, it is carefully planned and executed, an intricate combination of skills. The great artists each add their special moment to the play. The greatest appear casual even at the most difficult parts. The maestro controls the elements of the score, just as the drivers conduct the combined play of many. Beauty, splendor, grace, and a never-ending quest for excellence. All of these things are embodied in the PPG IndyCar World Series, which today performs among the Rocky Mountains in Denver. The Texaco Haviland Grand Prix is a symphony about to begin. With the Rocky Mountains as a backdrop, the Indy cars are ready to race in downtown Denver, Colorado, in a circuit that passes right in front of the State House. Hello and welcome to the Mile High City. I'm Paul Page. Last time we saw the Indy cars was on the Super Speedway at Michigan International. Now this is a tight, temporary circuit right in the center of the city. And as we come here, we have a most interesting points fight. Now remember, there are 21 points available in this race, 20 to the winner and 1 for leading the most laps. As we take a look at the points, we see that Bobby Rahal is way out in front. In fact, even if he doesn't finish in the numbers today, he can't be headed in the points fight. But Michael Andretti is most definitely on a charge. And Sam Posey, he is without question the focus of this event.
Yes, he is. On Friday, it was announced that he had signed for another year in the IndyCar competitions, thus ending the possibility that he might make the jump to Formula One. Now, when this happened with Al Unser Jr. last year, when he made a similar decision, Al then went on to win 4 consecutive races and wrap up the championship. Will this happen with Michael this year? It's hard to say, but yesterday he put together one of the best qualifying laps he has ever had in his career and took a point away from his arch rival Bobby Rahal.
Well, the circuit here is 16 turns, 1.9 miles. Bobby Unser, as I mentioned, the city's a mile high.
Well, Denver is over 5,000 feet high in altitude, Paul, higher than any race that we run. The density altitude, which is the combination of high temperature plus the altitude, is approximately 8,000 feet today. Now, this means cooling problems with the water, the oil, and especially the brakes. The mechanics have had to increase the cooling capabilities approximately 15%. And remember, most of the drivers come from sea level. This could be a big factor in the race today because the altitude will get to the drivers too.
Well, the engines have already been started. In fact, the first of 3 parade laps have been complete, and the cars are ready to race here at Denver. So let's take a look at the starting grid. On the pole, Michael Andretti, he's won 4 of the last 7 races. And Bobby Rahal, the current points leader. The second row, Al Unser Jr., the winner of this race last year. And Emerson Fittipaldi, who won on the streets of Detroit in June. The third row, Mario Andretti, who just signed a new 2-year contract with Newman Haas. And Eddie Cheever, his best starting spot since the season opener. The fourth row, Arie Luyendyk, who won at Phoenix in April, and Rick Mears. He swept both 500-milers this year. The fifth row, Scott Pruitt, his 8th top 10 start this season, and Danny Sullivan, who ran second here a year ago. In the 6th row, Scott Goodyear, the talented young Canadian, and John Andretti, the winner of the first race in Australia in March. The 7th row, Willie T. Ribbs is back, his best starting position this year, and Roberto Guerrero as well, driving for drag racer Kenny Bernstein. In the 8th row, it's Scott Brayton. He has 4 straight top 10 finishes, and Buddy Lazier from nearby Vail, Colorado. The 9th row, Didier Tays, making his 6th start this year, and Jeff Andretti, the leading candidate for Rookie of the Year honors. In the 10th row, Ted Prappis, a freshman out of Los Angeles, and Tony Bettenhausen, who ran a strong 5th 3 weeks ago at Michigan. The 11th row, Hiro Matsushita, sophomore from Japan, and Jeff Wood making his 4th 1991 start. In the final row, Randy Lewis, a veteran from Hillsborough, California, and John Jones from Thunder Bay, Ontario, Canada. That's your lineup, the starting field. field as we're ready to race here in the downtown Denver, Colorado. The main straightaway, the start-finish line, is right in front of the state capitol building. A most scenic course, not particularly fast, but very challenging for these drivers of the Indy cars. Johnny Rutherford handles the PPG pace car in front of the starting field. Now this is the pit area. You can see the State House in the background. The pits are actually removed from the start-finish line. They're around the corner just before the last turn. So a very different circuit, and add to that, the pits here are also curved. In fact, a double S-curve creates the pits here in Denver, Colorado. So the field working its way now, in fact, past the pit area, under several of the overpasses created here. And the pole sitter, Michael Andretti, will bring the field to the line. You're on board with Michael's brother, Jeff Andretti. We'll be following his progress throughout this run as well. The final turn. Michael Andretti and Bobby Rahal sit in the front row. The green flag comes out from Nick Finoro. And Michael Andretti takes a nice protected line into the first turn. Rahal comes up to challenge. It looks like Mario Andretti got bumped. He definitely got against the wall as the yellow flags come out. Also Emerson Fittipaldi, it appears, is in there, as is Arie Luyendyk.
A minimum of 5 cars affected by this. A minimum of 5 cars.
It was hard to tell. It was Rick Mears that is sitting there alone, not started, on board now.
We're looking from the cockpit of Mario Andretti, so we can try to assess right away whether he suffered any suspension damage. Bobby, the car looks pretty clean.
Yes, it does, Sam, but you know, it's the biggest strung out field, and the longest I've seen it feel strung out at the start that I've ever seen. So the guys just weren't ready. Now, he's definitely got something. His right front tires, his bench and his bench, you can see the wheel go down there, locked up. He just couldn't turn.
Notice, of course, that was the replay, the flat spot on the right front tire of Mario Andretti.
Well, Mario definitely saw something. Let's focus on his cards. Third back in that line on the left row. Mario Andretti was looking at something. Apparently, he saw the move by Cheever. Yes, Cheever came over to the right, and Mario yanked the car away, locked the brakes immediately because it put him on course with the wall. If he'd only had a foot or two more, he would have been fine. Cheever, Fittipaldi all got through, and then Rick Mears stacked into the back of Luyendyk. The rest of the field got through, but as Bobby Unser has pointed out, there is really a question about whether or not Mario can continue. Bobby Unser, let's watch again in slow motion. Here's regular speed. There's Mario.
Now you can see, Paul, he just locked the brakes really hard and fast. You can see the flat spot on the right front tire. He bumped the wall, but ironically, he didn't hit it very hard. Not as hard from the slow speed as it looked like in the beginning.
I didn't see anything obviously bent there. We'll certainly check on Mario Andretti. Arie Luyendyk is getting a little help from the kart safety team, and the race is under a full course yellow, brought out right in the very first corner. The Texaco Haviland Grand Prix is underway slowly. Under full course yellow, the field continues to circle around as a result of Mario Andretti's accident on the very first lap. Let's go down to the pits, get an update from Gary Gerould.
Paul, a couple of things we need to address early. This race is 10 laps shorter than it was a year ago in the inaugural version. CART has dictated that this must be a 2 pit stop race, even though at the shorter distance the teams could conceivably make this in 1 stop. A mandatory second stop must be made. You must change at least 1 tire or hook up your fueling equipment. Now, with that little incident on the first lap, Rick Mears has already been in the pits. Eddie Cheever has been in the pits. There was no damage that we could see. They got back out, but they've taken care of 1 of 2 mandatory pit stops. While it wasn't a popular ruling with all the teams, we think that most of the teams will take advantage of that second stop to get fresh tires, because tire wear is a consideration. And for more on that, let's go further up pit road to our colleague Jack Arute.
Well, Gary, you can take strategies and you can throw them out the window today. Most of the drivers and crew chiefs say it's a seat of a pants race. Not because of the 2 pit stops, because of tires. It seems that the tire is a harder compound here this year than last year, but the problem is it only lasts for about 4 laps. Then they go away, and they only last for about 20 laps. So many of the crew chiefs are concerned that they won't have a sufficient tire left at the end of the race. So even though you could have gone on 1 stop, many people feel that that second stop that was made mandatory may benefit them by being able to change tires. Not the case with Chip Ganassi's crew. Eddie Cheever, they planned regardless to come in under the first caution. They attached the fuel vent hose. They say, we've got our mandatory stop out of the way. We're going to try and go the rest of the distance on only 1 stop if the tires hold out.
And once again, the definition of the pit stop is to attach the fuel hose or to change a tire. Indication is Mario Andretti, you're on board with him now, has some loose bodywork and a little damage to the left front. Right front suspension, Bobby Unser looks pretty good.
It certainly does, Paul. I don't think he's got any problems. Like I said, he didn't hit as hard as it first looked like he did. Here's a guy that's down a lap. Ari Luyendyk, he sat there with a dead engine, couldn't get restarted.
Once
he's got a long way to catch up.
Once he did, he slid into 24th or last place. Mario Andretti will restart in 23rd position. No cars out of the race as a result of that. Rick Mears, as noted, made a quick pass through the pits. They took a look at the nose, made what changes they could. Carl Haas certainly wondering about the condition of Mario's car, and his hopes for the moment are pinned on Michael's car. Now, this is Michael's. The difference for these onboard cameras is you will notice Michael has a great deal of white on the cowling around the cockpit. Mario's will have some black paint in the area up there around the cockpit. So we'll try and help you along, but we need the help as well.
Mario, of course, announced that he would drive for the Newman Haas team for another 2 years, so his career very much invigorated by that recent decision at the same time that Michael said he would sign for next year. Mario obviously hit from behind to trigger that incident, and you see him now.
The pace car has already pulled off into the pit area as the field circles in front of the pits, and one more turn, a right-hander, and they should see a green flag once again, assuming they're lined up and the starter accepts the positioning, and we should be back racing. We are, in fact. So the Texaco Havoline Grand Prix of Denver is back underway. No cars out of the races as a result of that first contact, but what it has done is strung the field out just a little bit. Eddie Cheever pulls up there to try and make a little move on John Andretti, and the rest of the field, for the most part, comes through single file.
Michael was very concerned with riding with him here when I talked to him day before yesterday about Ray Hall's ability to keep these tires alive. Jack Arute mentioned the tire wear issue. Ray Hall has a very good setup in his car that does not overheat the tires as much as in Michael's car. So Michael may try to pour it on here in the early stages to get what of a lead he possibly can over his rival.
Now the temperature is hot here in Denver. Temperatures into the 90s, though a clear sky overhead. Bobby Unser, they're actually facing several problems. You already mentioned the altitude problem and the fact that there isn't a lot of air getting into the brakes and the coolers. But we also have the problem of high temperatures and surface differences, asphalt, concrete, and that's what's going to wear the tires. Look at Fittipaldi as he locks that right front coming into that corner.
What you find mostly, Paul, is that the sun is shining. If we had clouds overhead, everything would stay fine. The 90-degree temperature would be no factor at all. It's the clouds overhead. Makes that pavement just really hot and slippery because it's the radiant heat that does it. You watch Ambo sliding his tires going in. He just doesn't have his brake balance set just right now, but partially because the sun's shining on the track.
Michael Andretti leads, Bobby Ray Hall, then Al Unser Jr. Emerson Fittipaldi is fourth. Mario Andretti is being shown high up in the lineup on the computer, but we doubt that situation. We'll check it for you. And Al Unser Jr. moves inside of Bobby Ray Hall. And Al Unser Jr. now has second place. So the Gallus team already moving very quickly here, and Al Unser Jr. recognizing that if he is to have any place at all in winning this race a second time, he needs to move early.
Al Unser Jr. did not do very well on Friday in qualifying. He did a bit better yesterday, and he has shown now that all that time through qualifying, he was pursuing a race day setup, not worried about qualifying time so much. He obviously has that same kind of terrific race day setup he had here last year and earlier this year at Long Beach, 2 races which he won decisively. I imagine as Michael Andretti sees him in his mirrors, he may be very afraid of what he sees.
Confirmation accurate. Mario Andretti runs in 5th place. 6th is Scott Pruitt. Scott Goodyear is up in 7th place. John Andretti is 8th, and Eddie Cheever is 9th, followed by Danny Sullivan. Michael Andretti, without question, as Sam Posey suggested right at the start, is the man to catch here today. He has finished second to Ray Hall in championships in the past. He does not want to have that happen again. So now 4 laps are complete here in Denver, and Michael Andretti has led through the first caution. We're back to racing. Back in Denver, Colorado, Ari Luyendyk tries to cut his way up through the field after falling all the way to the back. That's Hiro Matsushita just in front of him, and he recognizes the presence of Luyendyk. A much faster car as Luyendyk ducks to the inside. Back at the front of the field, Al Unser Jr. chases Michael Andretti. They come down into the what should be. Michael is trying to hold off Al Unser Jr., but Little Al is pushing as hard as he can. They come beside the pits now, making a quick curve through there, and Little Al is right on top of Michael Andretti. Into the final turn now. Nice long straightaway just ahead. Michael Andretti has led from the green flag through the first caution, but Al Unser Jr. was able to move up as soon as the green flag came out the second time. Now he's right at the back of Michael's car. Al Unser comes to the inside. Michael tries to protect the line. And boy, he waits to break until the last second and then turns in, and Al Unser Jr. takes the lead.
It's a pass. It was close to a wreck, Paul, because you could watch Michael getting ready to just get over and block him a bit. Almost a touching there.
Let's go down to the pits, Jack Arute.
Paul, the biggest concern that Rick Ellis had before the start of this race was that his driver would go to the front too soon. He said, I need to keep a bridle on both my drivers because we don't want to wear the car out. But then I asked him, how do you do that? He says, with Little Al, you just have to wait. He dictates the pace of the race. Obviously, there's not a bridle in his mouth this afternoon.
Al Unser Jr. going just as fast and hard as he can.
That pass of his was an identical pass almost to the one at the end of the long straight at Long Beach this spring when he also passed Michael Andretti for the lead, a race in which, of course, Little Al went on to win handily.
Now the fight becomes one for second place as Michael Andretti trying to hold off Little Al's teammate at the Craig O'Gallus operation, and that is Bobby Rahal, the points leader.
Now we got to remember, Little Al is out on the lead, pulling away a little bit. To Rahal, this becomes very important. The tires are going to get worse. They're not going to get better. Passing becomes harder the worse that the tires get as compared to sticking on the racetrack. So Rahal has to push very hard to Michael now. If they don't have a yellow flag, he could be in trouble if he gets held up.
And at the same time, Emerson Fittipaldi is set up to try and attack Rahal anytime now.
Well, consider the championship position, too. Rahal, of course, leads the championship by the big margin that you described at the beginning of the show, Paul. But he can afford to finish second or third today. So he may be just a little bit cautious. Michael Andretti basically is in a must-win position, as is Al Unser Jr. So we're going to see all day long not only a race waged in front of us, but a championship battle with all of the strategic implications that go with that.
As a matter of fact, Rahal could win the championship quite simply by keeping Michael Andretti in sight in front of him through the rest of the season. But of course, that's not really the way Rahal would ever play.
Rahal loves this situation, but they're both attackers. You know, Rahal, a great student, of course, of military history. We're talking about it with Bob Sterling, our great advisor, this morning, and he said, you know, when you think about it, these are like General Grant and General Lee. They're both attacking men, and they're not going to give it up just because they're not going for the lead. They're thinking the championship, too.
At the same time, Michael Andretti may be driving with greater style than he ever has in his career. He has really been outstanding. I spoke to him the other night at a ball they held here to the benefit of the Heart Association. I told him I was sorry because he was going to miss a ride in Formula One this next year. And he said, don't feel sorry for me. I love what I'm doing. And look how well he's doing it now, though Al Unser Jr. runs in front.
Well, of course, the negotiations for the Formula One ride, among other things, allowed him to have some leverage over this team. Probably signed a very large dollar deal, which he is not adverse to doing, but also to demonstrate that he is a key element in this team, a man, the kind of really driving genius around which a whole team gels.
So Michael Andretti leads at the battle of second place between, or Al Unser Jr. leads at the battle is between Michael Andretti and Bobby Rahal, with Emerson Fittipaldi closing in, as well as Mario Andretti. We've mentioned how the altitude here in Denver forces these teams to make changes for this race. Danny Sullivan tells us about the altitude's effort in our tips from the cockpit.
Well, of course, the biggest thing here is we're at 5,300 feet. That's higher than we race anywhere else. One of the major problems is the heat with the car. They overheat because water has a lower boiling point at altitude than it does at sea level, now by about 30 degrees. Compounded with the fact that we're on a short, tight track, so we're never getting up higher. I think the fastest we go is 150 miles an hour, which sounds a lot to people out there if you're driving down the freeway, but 150 miles an hour to us on a circuit is not very fast. Plus the fact that we only get that one place, so we're not shoving much air through the radiators for a very long period of time to cool everything down. So on the cars, you'll see a lot of areas where behind the radiators where it's cut out bigger to get more flow through the radiators to cool the cars down. You'll also see bigger brake ducts on the front and the rear, because the braking here is so hard and it tends to boil the brakes a little bit easier up here. and there are so many short straightaways, short stops, quick on the brake. I think we're only averaging under 80 miles an hour as our lap average. That's very, very difficult on the brake. So cooling is probably the major consideration here in Denver.
Well, Danny Sullivan just pitted, and in doing so, he fell from 11th to 21st position. Eddie Cheever, as he challenges John Andretti. This is a fight for 7th place. Willie Ribbs should be coming off that corner just behind this battle as well. So fights up and down the field in 2nd place and also back here at 7th on the streets of Denver, Colorado. John Andretti, remember, won the very first race of the season in his first drive for the Hall VDS team. So he's a proud driver who is looking for his 2nd run. On the other hand, Eddie Cheever in that black and red Target car, well, he hasn't yet scored his first victory in the Indy cars and is in fact anxious to do so.
Well, let's just remind people of one thing. The CART has mandated 2 pit stops for this race, whereas some of these cars could have done a little bit different game plan and done it with 1. 2 pit stops. So the game plans for the entire race are going to be a little bit mixed up or a little bit not understood until we get towards the latter part of 3/4 through the race, and then we'll have a better feeling.
In fact, there was some indication that there was dissatisfaction. Scott Goodyear comes into the pits, and in doing so, they take the cowling off the car. So this is a lengthy and a most serious pit stop for Scott Goodyear. Some of the teams were very unhappy with what they felt was artificial meddling with the rules, enforcing 2 pit stops, when in fact many of the teams felt that the cars could complete this race on 1. The battle continues for 2nd place between Michael Andretti and Bobby Rahal. There comes Fittipaldi through, who seems most pleased to just wait station. And just back from him, Mario Andretti runs in 5th. Michael Andretti continues to run in 2nd place. And at the front of the field, it is Al Unser Jr. Now, we are thus far 11 laps deep, 13 laps deep in this race. And here is a great fight for 7th place between Cheever and John Andretti. Mario Andretti tapped the wall in the very first corner of the first lap, and in doing so, they brought out a full course yellow. When they came back to the action, Michael Andretti led, and then Al Unser Jr. was able to get past Michael, and Michael fell back to 2nd place, now being chased by Rahal. This is John Andretti being chased by Eddie Cheever. Nice little fight here. Cheever made one of the first of 2 stops that he's going to make. Now he's going to try and run inside John Andretti. John pulls wide. They get together and they touch. They touch. John Andretti is sent spinning, and Eddie Cheever moves on.
It's inconceivable to me, Paul, that John Andretti did not see Eddie Cheever starting by him on the inside.
Now, Sam, I think what you're going to find, or what we saw there, is the fact that Cheever was up alongside. He really had the racing line.
Yeah. And John Andretti has some serious damage. The nose is off the front of that car, and the question is whether or not the brake lines are damaged. Let's go to Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, let's update you on several other drivers that have had problems befall them. Scott Goodyear, with a severe water leak, has dropped out of the race. They're continuing to try and bring the car back. Danny Sullivan. Now, we talked to Pat Patrick and his team, and they said that they have got a severe handling problem, and they are not sure where to even begin to attack it. They don't think it's tires. They think they've gone totally the wrong way in chassis. Gary?
Jack, we've got problems for another of the front runners, Emerson Fittipaldi, reporting problems with his braking. That was a concern for everybody. They think it's the rear brakes, but Roger Penske, Chuck Sprague, and the team here indicate they're going to try to leave him out to handle the course as best he can, as long as he can. But braking problems for Fittipaldi. Paul?
Well, Bobby Unser, some of the things that you most definitely predicted there. Brakes again because the air is not dense, even though you see, if you look at the back of Emerson Fittipaldi's car, inside the rear wheels as well as the front, some very large scoops that direct air down onto the brake discs and pads. It's still really not enough at this altitude.
No, and the rear brakes get the hottest, Paul. And what happens is that the brake fluid boils, and it only boils in half of the system. There's 2 master cylinders, one for the front, one for the back. The black ones are probably boiling the fluid, not having the brakes, and that's the reason you watch him locking up the front when he does.
The battle continues at 2nd place as Bobby Rahal tries everything he can to worry Michael Andretti. One car stopped on the course. That's Didier Taze, the leader card entry. Taze has been running most of the road courses in this machine this year. And he's over off the racing line. Shouldn't be a danger there. No indication why that car may have stopped on the course. Most accomplished driver. Here is John Andretti back in the pits, and you see they have already fixed a new nose on the car. Here's Jack.
Well, Paul, what they had to do is completely replace the front end. The nose section was sheared off right by the brake cylinder, by the brake reservoirs. But with the new design of these cars, you actually can replace the wing and the nose cone in one full piece. They completed that entire operation in a little less than 2.5 minutes.
Well, John Andretti back in the fight, and look at this. John Andretti comes right out with his combatant of earlier, Eddie Cheever, and Cheever is closing in on Scott Pruitt in what now is a battle for 6th place. Now, John Andretti most certainly is not part of the fight because he's fallen way back through the field and is in fact running 23rd right now, but he is still with this battle with a nice fresh nose on the car.
Remember that Cheever's experience in Formula One, running courses like Monaco, stands him in very good stead on these tight courses. He finished 3rd earlier this year at Long Beach. He is obviously having another strong day. They did some testing here at altitude during this week, or earlier this week, at a small track near Denver. It's obviously paying off.
Okay, also keep in mind, though, Eddie Cheever, the man right there we see in the picture, was the guy that pushed Mario Andretti into the wall at the start, the first turn. So Eddie was a little bit hot on that first turn there, Sam.
He's aggressive. He wants to make it all happen very fast. He's a guy who's basically underachieved so far this year. They've gotten some testing under their belt. They want to make it pay off for them right now.
Cheever smoothly around Pruitt. Now John Andretti wants to try Scott Pruitt. Remember, in Cheever's car, Chevrolet power, but Judd power in Scott Pruitt's machine, in a car designed here. Boy, look at that, as Michael Andretti is battling once again with Rahal. We'll get back to the Eddie Cheever situation. Michael Andretti and Rahal are at it once again.
This is incredibly volatile because, of course, these are the two major combatants in the championship. Rahal leading Michael Andretti in the championship, but behind him here he's in a position to be very conservative. He is not being conservative. He is trying to press Michael Andretti into a mistake and get by him.
And Bobby Unser, we're seeing two slightly different lines out of these drivers.
Yes, you certainly are, because Rahal is getting the air disturbed just a little bit following Michael, but what you can see, because he is so close to Michael all the time, that he's actually handling and working a little bit better. So he's just waiting for Michael to make a little bit of a mistake. He's not able to outbrake him so far, though.
Al Unser Jr. is the leader. This is the battle for second. Al Unser Jr., the defending champion here.
Yeah, and of course it's an ideal situation for the Craco Gallus team, because they've got their man Al Unser way out front, which means that Michael Andretti cannot pick up that bonus point for leading the most laps, which he has picked up 5 separate times during the season so far this year.
Local driver Buddy Lazier now up to 10th place. He's never had a top 10 finish in his career. He's got a lot of fans in the stands here from Vail, Colorado, his hometown, rooting for him.
Well, he's come a long ways in motor racing, and he really deserves a lot for being up in a 10th place with a field like this, Paul.
Bobby Rahal knows, of course, that should a passing maneuver take both these cars out, and here
Rahal's going to try the maneuver, and come Michael right over to try and get in front of him. He does so. He blocks Rahal out of the corner and maintains second.
Now, a deal like that, you can just flat see. Bobby Rahal is using good common sense. He was afraid he'd get an accident. The points right there are worth more than the pass was. Now, that is the act of a very smart race driver.
Very disciplined driver. That's Sandy Andretti, Michael's wife. And you saw that the safety vehicles on the course and waving yellows in that one section, as well as the white flag there, which tells the drivers that there is a safety vehicle ahead. They're trying to get Didier Taze off the course.
Of course, if Rahal and Andretti were both eliminated in the same crash, that would actually help Rahal vis-a-vis the championship in terms of his battle with Michael Andretti. But if Al Unser Jr. goes on to win the race, he's currently 4th in the championship, he would vault up and become a contender. So caution is still a factor here.
The battle for second place now moves around Jeff Wood as Rahal continues to stalk Michael Andretti. And this will become a most fascinating battle now, because they are beginning to overhaul the back of the field, and in doing so on a circuit as tight as this is and surprisingly slow as this is, if you want to regard 70 to 125 miles an hour as slow, well, the timing to the corner with other cars who are running slower than you there, that can be critical. Debbie Rahal watches her husband.
You know, Paul, another thing we got to watch, we'll watch Rahal chasing Michael there. It's difficult to follow a car around a course like this. You can't judge because of the cement wall so much of what the other guy is doing, plus all the heat in the exhaust and everything.
Here's Rahal going to make a shot again. The two of them get together. Both the combatants in the fight. Michael Andretti frustrated with that when the engine appears dead. Jeff left. Wood pulls to a stop just behind him. The corner workers trying desperately to slow any oncoming traffic down.
Emerson Fittipaldi involved too.
Fittipaldi right there, but he got going again. There goes Dad. Mario Andretti through, and Michael is looking for an opportunity to roll out.
Emo got blocked. This is the one thing that should not have happened. Rahal really had to pass on Michael right there. Michael just pinched him into the wall too tight. Now, you don't, well, Rahal just went by, he's going.
Rahal got going. Michael's trying to get going. Apparently having trouble getting it. Now it's under power, and Michael is rolling again, but Rahal definitely got the advantage out of that one.
A decisive moment in the championship, because certainly to turn the tide, Michael Andretti had to win this race. He's not now in a position to do so.
Bobby Unser, here it is again.
Now here Rahal is trying to outbrake him coming in the turn. He has plenty of room. Now Michael can see way over there. Rahal is more than up alongside of him, more than even. Michael just came right on down. There was no place for Bobby Rahal to go. They're going to be lucky if it doesn't knock both of them out of the race. Emo Fittipaldi right behind the number 5 car gets blocked. The total road is blocked right there.
But you know, that's the same place where John Andretti misjudged Cheever's presence there. Here's the leader, Al Unser Jr. Of course, his job made a lot easier by what has just happened behind him on the road. But that's where John Andretti had trouble too, and it makes me think two drivers of that caliber are not lulled into an easy error like that. It must be very difficult in that turn to see the man inside of you for some reason. Now let's take a look at just exactly what he sees and doesn't see.
Michael's on board camera as he comes into the corner. At this moment, Rahal is maneuvering to the inside, and they get together. And in fact, as you hear the revs come up, that tells you that Michael's rear end got off the ground and the rears spun up and the engine got up to some high rev.
Well, he was also shifting. He obviously didn't know that Bobby was going to hit. He was just shifting and revving the engine up to get going again, Paul.
This is Jeff Andretti. That's Michael's brother, of course. And the 31 car of Ted Prappis is stopped as well. So a good number of changes occurring here. Rahal was able to come out just behind Scott Pruitt, which put him into 6th place. And Michael Andretti is now behind Willie Ribbs in 8th place. So a change in the order, as Sam pointed out, potentially a change in the championship. And look at Michael, he's flat at the left rear tire. He's going to have to limp around to the pits, and that can cause damage.
Well, not only can cause damage, you can beat everything up the car, Paul, but it's going to cost him precious time because he has to get in with that tire. Now, it's going to give, if Bobby Rahal is not bent. Remember we said they're going to be lucky if there isn't something wrong. He's also dragging the bottom of this race car. It's going to really tear the race car up for Michael to get in, but this is what you call desperation time. He has to get back in the race, otherwise no points.
Now as Michael goes through corners, the right front comes off the ground. He can barely steer the car, and he's just trying to limp his way around, find his way into the pits. And look, you'll see that what happens when he makes a turn in there, he gets on the brakes, and the wheel with no weight on it in front will lock completely up.
He's only halfway around the lap too. He's still got a ways to go. He's got to get down by the convention center, which you see in front of you there, make a couple of more rights before he can double back to the pits.
Every foot is damaging that car. As I suggested, when you go into a right-hand corner in the weight transfer, well, with the back end, the whole chassis is off a tilt, so when he hits the brakes, that one's going to lock on it.
Yeah, that's because the suspensions are so incredibly stiff on these cars. This would not happen with a regular passenger car.
The tub is really so stiff that the suspension is just falling down on the left rear, and we see the right front lock up on the car. The main thing, though, is what we don't see is it's wearing something out on the bottom. We can't see that. The pit crews will have to look at that when he comes in.
Bobby, what about in terms of a tactical mistake as now he makes it onto the pits? Here he's involved in a contact accident, and he doesn't, well, Rahal didn't either, come into the pits to give him a chance to check it. Is it just that the fight was so solid?
Yes, it was. They were both just hoping that as long as the engine runs, you can shift it. You look in your mirrors, you've got 2 tires on the rear and 2 tires on the front. That's all you really worry about.
All right, let's go to Gary.
Now, Paul, we get our first look as we lean out over the wall with a very anxious crew, the man who has led 39% of all the laps this year in the IndyCar season, shaking his head in disgust. All he can do is wait. They've got him down off the jacks. They changed tires, and he is gone. He'll try it. They had suspension parts and everything ready. They didn't have to change them this time.
Just a tick under 14 seconds, and Michael Andretti is out of the pits. But let's remember just how much time he lost trying to get that wounded machine back into the pits. It certainly has taken him out of the top of the order, if not out of the championship fight. Al Unser Jr. continues to lead. Back in Denver, Colorado at the Texaco Havoline Grand Prix. Buddy Lazier and Scott Brayton with a whale of a battle. Lazier currently occupies 9th. He's never finished in the top 10 in an IndyCar race. And of course, Sam Posey, he's got a lot of friends down from Vail that are certainly cheering him on.
You bet it. While Scott Brayton, who you see here behind him, is of course a seasoned veteran, this is a really big day for Buddy Lazier, not only because it's near his hometown, but because he's running higher up in an IndyCar race than he ever has before, and he's a guy of great potential, finally being able to show it.
And remember, he doesn't have near the horsepower that you see right there in the Amway car of Scott Brayton's, but Buddy is local. Don't you always see, Sam, that the local guys drive a little bit harder than the guys from out of town?
Yeah, his dad, of course, a very fine driver, all the way behind his son here, and I just hope here's a guy who can get going in the big leagues of racing.
And both he and his dad, competent skiers. They run a lodge up at Vail, and you couldn't ask for nicer people, which is indicative pretty much of about all the guys in racing. Scott Brayton trying to catch up. We take a look up. This is a fight for third place. Cheever moves inside of Mario, and John Andretti is set right up behind there. He's not part of the fight, but the fight continues on as Eddie Cheever tries to carve his way up through the field. And now Cheever is into third place behind Fittipaldi, and Al Unser Jr. is the leader. John Andretti still trying to work his way up through the field, but since he is in 20th place, he has a great deal of ground to make up.
But he has to do that, Paul, and the reason is if he could just get enough ahead, a yellow comes out, or something happens like to Mario, hey, he could jump up 10 positions so fast it wouldn't even be funny.
Take a look at Mario's car because he does seem a little bit off the pace. Bobby, can you see anything on that car? Remember, he was involved in contact. You got the wing flopping loose, but I wonder if something else now hasn't developed.
Well, it could easily be bent a little bit, but you must remember now, the wings here are very important. The tunnels underneath the race car do very little because of the low speed of the race.
Scott Brayton gets past Buddy Lazier as Buddy gets a little bit off the line under braking. May have been, in fact, losing his brakes.
I started to say, Paul, that the tunnels underneath the car, the ground effects part of these cars, don't do an awful lot because of the slower speeds here in downtown Denver. The thing that works is the wings on the cars.
Buddy Lazier trying now to get back around Scott Brayton, but look right behind him, the #1 car. That's the leader of the race, Al Unser Jr.
Al Unser Jr. started this race only 10 points behind Michael Andretti. As of this moment, with Al leading, he stands a very good chance of moving into second place in the standings ahead of Michael and behind only his teammates. So the Gallus team, Craco team may come out of this thing with an arm lock on the championship.
Al Unser Jr., who now leads by 27 seconds. Lazier got a glimpse of him in the rearview mirrors and quickly moved out of the way. So now little Al has to get around Scott Brayton, and he wants to do so very carefully, again, because this is a temporary circuit. It is lined with barriers, and those barriers are totally unforgiving. There goes Rahal as he battles with Mario, and he goes past, picks up 4th place. Mario Andretti steadily falling backwards, Bobby. Is it possible that whatever damage was done in that very first corner is now being aggravated? We just don't see it.
Yes, it is. The tires are getting hot. The track is getting slipperier as the race goes on, and that front wing is where his problems are. And I don't really think that he's bent on the front, but we must also remember it wouldn't only take but just a little tiny bit of bending that wouldn't show up to cause the handling to be off.
Some of the tire experts here at the track, like Jerry Breon of Penske, told me that one of the problems they are having here is with buildup on the tires. That's to say that there are little particles of rubber that come off the tires as they wear, but then they're very soft and they get right back and adhere to the surface, and then you don't have anything. Look at the newspaper down in his cooler. Remember, high altitude, not very much density, and so as a result, that could cause some real damage. Emerson Fittipaldi is in. Here's Gary.
And we're watching the Penske team go to work. They're concerned about rear brakes. Nothing they can do about it. It appears from this standpoint, a routine stop for rubber and fuel. Emerson is away in about 14.5 seconds, Paul.
Emerson Fittipaldi came in second place and now comes out of the pits. May not lose too much as he comes back into the action. So Emerson Fittipaldi back into the fight in 5th position as he lines up behind Mihiro Matsushita.
Emerson made the point to me this morning that this track has so many second gear turns. He's in one of them right now where the speed is only somewhere between 48 and 55 miles an hour, which for an Indy car is almost at a dead stop.
And we also got to remember, these are literally 90-degree corners on a street in downtown Denver.
Real streets. They just came off Lincoln Boulevard, I think.
A point perhaps that we should make here too, because we've heard a lot. Well, here comes the leader in. Jack Arute is in Little Al's pit.
And what Team Gallus has decided to do is evenly distribute their pit stops. They will take 4 new Goodyear tires all the way around and the remaining fuel that they have in the tank. Remember, as we told you, not necessary for refueling today. They'll be able to go to 1 stop, but they are off and away very quick. And a quick look at tire wear does not seem to be a problem with this team right now, Paul.
Oh, wow, what a great stop. 13 seconds flat. He's in and out.
Right now, this is the only car running in the top 5 or 6 for which we can perceive no obvious problem. He would seem to be in by far the best shape.
In the best shape because he was able to get in and out of the pits and maintain the lead. Bobby Rahal is running in 3rd place. Eddie Cheever runs in 2nd. And these stops now, Bobby Unser, are coming about where one would expect them.
Yes, they decided the game plans were going to be like 1/3, 1/3, and then the finish. In other words, 24, 25 laps, and that's what they're doing. Of course, the yellow flags make so much difference if we have any, but other than early on, Paul, we've only had local yellow flags.
So Al Unser Jr. has completed his first stop. Remember, Eddie Cheever in 2nd place stopped very early on. Bobby Rahal has not stopped and is expected to do so shortly. So the first set of regularly scheduled stops of 2, and 2 is not guesswork here because CART, through its officials, have mandated 2 stops in this race, despite the fact that some cars feel they could have done it in 1.
Yes, that's true, and I just was going to mention along those lines, as the cars are coming in now, don't need fuel. Fuel is not the problem. It's the tires. They need the tires because Goodyear came here with a very hard compound as opposed to last year's tire, and the guys just don't have a good tire that lasts very long. The tires get slippery. Now, the buildup that you were talking about a little bit earlier isn't quite as bad when you're up to speed. There's very little of it. It's when the cars slow down to come into the pits, the buildup looks like it's gross on the tires.
But of course, some of the argument seems to be that because the top speed is only about 125, 130 miles an hour, that the buildup builds up very quickly and doesn't go away. Next Saturday at 12:30 Eastern, ABC's college football season begins with an explosive matchup. Cotton Bowl champion Miami Hurricanes kick up some dirt when they take on the Arkansas Razorbacks. And then Greg Norman, Mark Calcavecchia, and more tee off as we begin coverage of the Greater Milwaukee Open. That's all next Saturday here on ABC Sports.
Paul, one little more note on the build-up. There's a lot of other types of cars that run on the track during this weekend.
Mario Andretti is in the pits. Gary Gerald.
And indeed, Paul, we're looking down to see that damaged nose wing on the left side. Mario wanted attention to it. They held him out gambling for a yellow. Didn't get it. They made a good stop. He's been soldiering with a heavily damaged front nose wing. He's back on course.
So Mario Andretti comes back out. Gary Gerald, if you're still with us, Gary, is there any other obvious changes? We're taking a look at Roberto Guerrero's pit stop, but did they make any other obvious changes that might account for the very slow performance in the last few laps?
No, in the scramble that we could see here, trying to step around a couple of the crew members and stay out of their tangle of hoses, Paul, we could not see any other particular changes.
All right, the other thing that one will have to be concerned with is whether or not that newspaper that got up on the left side cooler might have overheated the engine and caused some damage. So we'll keep an eye on Mario Andretti's car. Willie T. Ribbs is now up running in 5th place. Al Unser Jr. leads it, then Cheever, then Rahal, then Fittipaldi, and then Willie T. Ribbs.
You know, Paul, I just wanted to mention real quick, the other classes of cars that run here, the Trans Am cars, the Firestone Superlights, all those cars leave rubber on the track. These cars pick up that rubber really bad. Sometimes if the compounds are not compatible with each other, it makes it worse.
Surprise to me is that Rahal has not yet stopped. Here's Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, that is not surprising in itself, in so much as Bobby Rahal had elected to stay out there as long as he could. The only reason that he is pitting at the present time is due to a problem that they think they may have with one of the header pipes. As he went by several laps ago, they all realized that he may have a problem. They're going to go ahead and change all 4 tires. It has fallen down off the jacks. The air hoses come out, and they drop the car literally down on the chassis. Things are not going well for Bobby Rahal. The engine has died.
But
you
they
can hear
think
the
it was.
silence.
Jack, what they think it was?
They thought it was a fault, a leak in the header, Paul. That's exactly the case, but they still wanted to persevere on. And now it's just a question mark as to what they will do.
Well, it sounded like it. You could hear a different roar to the engine, which indicates that some of the exhaust is leaking out of that car. And so now, well over 40 seconds, Bobby Rahal has been in the pits. His teammate Al Unser Jr. leads this race. This could be devastating to the overall championship fight. Though, again, as we said at the start of this show, Bobby Rahal cannot finish in the numbers here, and he'll still lead this race with the points championship, at least for the moment. At the front of the field, it's Al Unser Jr. Eddie Cheever is second. Emerson Fittipaldi is third. We'll be back with more from Denver. Well, the 10 car, Willie T. Ribbs, who was running fourth just seconds ago, came rolling into the pits. That is a car. If it looks a lot like Matsushida's car, it's because it is a car that was made in an arrangement with Dick Simon and Derek Walker's team. Dick made this car available to Derek to run this race, and Willie's making every effort he can to stay at the front of the order and doing a fine job of it.
Well, running in fourth place is not too bad. Willie doesn't have all that much experience, and I think that's a tremendous showing today, Paul.
All right, let's go down and find out more about Bobby Rahal's situation. Here's Jack Arute.
Well, Paul, remember we first thought it might have been a faulty header or a leak in the header system, but according to Bobby Rahal, it was something far more serious.
Yeah, it looks like a valve might have dropped or something broke because there's water coming out of the exhaust pipes, and everything was running good. We had a problem with the brakes.
You could see the fluid. You could see the fluid literally leaking out of the pipes, but this really puts a different twist on the whole chase for the championship.
Back to square one. You know.
How bad does that bother you? I mean, you always say I take it one race at a time.
Not much I can do about it now. You know, you just got to have to try to win at Vancouver.
Paul?
Well, it'll definitely tighten up the points fight.
If the race ended right now, Rahal would still lead. He'd have 141 points. Al Unser Jr., if he won it, will have 129 points. Michael Andretti, 124. So if it stays pretty much as it is right now, we're going to have a solid three-way battle for the championship with 5 races remaining in the series.
In the second race in a row that Bobby Rahal has failed to finish, Al Unser Jr. continues to lead.
Well, it's a shameful thing with Bobby Rahal, Paul, but even though you have a Chevrolet engine, which is by far the best engine running today, he's broken 2 of them this weekend. One of them in practice and another one today. And sometimes things like that make the decision on championships, and that's kind of sad.
Well, shades of the start of the race, no, not nearly the same contest. Michael Andretti is sitting just in front of Al Unser Jr. Let's take a look at a comparison between Bobby Rahal and Michael Andretti. This has been Rahal's position throughout the year, and he has been incredibly consistent. On the other hand, Michael Andretti has not been nearly as consistent. Look at that, up to the top, down to the bottom of the scale. Now Michael, with his problems here today, is running in 7th place, but the good news for him is that Rahal is out of the run, and so Michael now has a chance to earn some points on Rahal.
How often that's called charging. Michael is the chargingest race driver of 1991. He flat gets with it, and he's done it all year. He takes more chances, but generally speaking, he goes the fastest of anybody this year.
That very informative graphic, by the way, courtesy of Ann Roller, who's done our graphics all year. A really good job.
All right, let's go down to Jack Arute.
Paul, the last time we were at an oval track at Michigan a couple of weeks ago, this man was challenging for the lead. Not today, Arie Luyendyk. What happened to your car?
Well, I think the ignition box went out because it popped and banged a few times and it just quit. And of course, until that point, we were having a pretty rough day, having lost a lap. You know, after the first lap, I had to go and avoid those guys in turn 1, and the car stalled, and they never could push me and start it again. So.
What about the tight quarters here? As you look at the races that's begun to unfold, what do you think about all of this? Is this a good place to race?
No, I don't think this is a good place to race. I think it's very tight, very narrow. Passing people is extremely difficult, even if they're a second or 2 seconds slower lap.
Paul?
Well, Jack Arute, what is a challenge to these race drivers is a magnificent venue for racing. Sam Posey, they're talking about, as we watch this battle between Fittipaldi and Cheever, it's a fight for second place. And for the moment, they seem to be holding steady. Oh, here comes Fittipaldi trying to get some air into his coolers. Sam, they're talking about moving this race out of the downtown next year. To me, that seems like it would be a tremendous loss to Denver.
I second that. I'd hate to see it happen. A track needs an identity. You might have great racing out in a parking lot, but nobody will ever remember it. And this track, of course, has the identity of the state capitol. It runs right in front of it. You think of all the other great tracks around the world, and you always think of where they are. Monaco, Long Beach, Indianapolis. Indianapolis. I know it's a lot of extra effort to keep the track downtown. I wish, Emerson.
Fittipaldi comes in. Cheever wisely turns away from him, and Cheever moves back to third as Emerson Fittipaldi comes up to second.
Well, that was a good and a close pass. You know, and it's at that one place where a lot of the passing happens, but you could see that Eddie Cheever did not expect Emmo to be there.
Bobby, why does most of the passing happen right there in front of the State House on the main stretch?
It's because it's at the end of a long straightaway. It's really wide. Let's watch Emmo here. He's zigzagging back and forth, trying to get Cheever to move to the outside, and now he's committed himself. Now he's really committed right now. And Eddie saw that, almost lost it. You can see the rear end literally sliding. In fact, when he finally came back around to the left with the rear end, to our right, the rear end was literally sliding almost to spin out, and he had to get back on the gas a little bit.
A superlative little save by Eddie Cheever, though. Nice piece of driving. He could have been in much more serious problems.
Well, that was a good pass. I just wanted to mention just real quick, here's Emmo still on the charge coming up behind his teammate Rick Mears, but Bill Daniels, who promotes this race, owns this race, is a very close friend of mine. I was talking to Bill a couple of days ago, and he said he didn't really want to leave the downtown, but the politics are a little too strong down here. The race would probably do better on out south of town here. Wider roads, everything be better, but Paul, it'll sure lose with a lot of romantic value that I think that it's always had being downtown.
You saw Fittipaldi alongside Rick there for a second. Rick Mears, after again that first lap situation, runs in 11th. The battle again here for 5th place as Willie Ribbs and Scott Pruitt. Pruitt in the 11 car lined up just behind Ribbs. Here are two drivers that raced against one another in the Trans Am for years, and here is Pruitt with his Judd Power trying to get inside of Willie T. Ribbs, and he does so.
That's Judd Power against the Cosworth, but obviously that was a horsepower
Ribbs
thing.
is coming right back. Boy, he was going to try him again. This is a good fight.
Well, drive it in. Ribbs just doesn't quite have the power that Scott Pruitt does. You can watch when they come off. Pruitt will just jump ahead a little bit. You see right there, Pruitt just pulling ahead.
Both these men desperately need a strong finish for their season. Scott Pruitt started the year very strongly in this all built in America car, but the last 4 or 5 races have not been successful for him. There's a lot of controversy about what he might do for next year, who he will drive for. There's Scott Pruitt. You see him there in the box, and exactly what will happen may be the result of what happens just in the next 2 or 3 races. Same for Willie T. Ribbs. He started the season very promisingly, but has not had a lot of luck up to this point. He too needs a big finish.
I think some of the things we hear about for next year is going to be Budweiser. Are they going to stay with Scott Pruitt and go there, or will Ray Hall leave Rick Gallus? Probably the biggest stories today.
Running in 3rd place now is Eddie Cheever. Jack Root has an Jack Root, are you with us?
Oh, hello, yeah, that finally they opened up the audio mic. Paul, remember during that aborted start when Eddie Cheever pitted, they connected the fuel hose? Well, now they are about to come in for what they say will be their final stop of this Grand Prix of Denver. The man that made the call, right here, Chip Ganassi, former driver and now the car owner for this team. They feel that they could be in good stead in terms of track positioning. Remember that most likely Al Jr. will have to make one additional stop. Not so for this team. They are about a half a lap away from pitting.
Well, if that's so, then Eddie Cheever, he's going to.
Well, Eddie Cheever's getting around the track pretty good right now. Of course, they have a game plan, and we also know that he's in 2nd place. He can move up. He's waiting for little Al. Game plans by pit stops could make a big difference, and that's what Chip Ganassi is planning on.
Eddie Cheever could look in a most excellent position as we keep an eye on him here. Currently running in 3rd place behind Fittipaldi and Al Unser Jr. Al Unser Jr. having a very smooth day. By the way, the Ganassi team should be in great shape for next year, as Eddie Cheever is all set to go. The team is pretty much in order, and Chip seems very, very satisfied with it. Now, at the front of the field, it is Al Unser Jr.
And we see from the car of Mario Andretti a view of the track and the skyline of Denver. Here is Eddie Cheever. We believe he is due very soon for a pit stop. You see him, he is having an extremely strong day, not since his Formula One days, where he scored 2nd places on a couple of the road courses, including Detroit, has he run this strong. Here he is into the pits.
So Eddie Cheever is there. Here's Jack Arute.
Paul, one of the things that we see also on Cheever's car, tires have not been a problem this afternoon. They've had a little bit of a difficulty changing the right rear, but they are completing the full tank, the full fuel load. They shake the fuel in there. He is off and away for the last time. They're not coming back, Paul. In 15.7, that's it for this crew.
A little slow, but in and out. They will not stop again as Eddie Cheever on the 35th lap has made his stop and comes back into the action. So the fight continues in Denver. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Back in Denver, you ride with Jeff Andretti currently in 10th place. A most unique view. The rear wheels spinning back there as Jeff powers his way around this circuit. It also gives you a good impression of the acceleration. That's Rick Mears just behind him. Now, Rick Mears runs in 11th place. He's made his second stop of the day, as has Eddie Cheever and Ted Prappis. All of the other cars have yet a stop to make before the end of this run. Let's go down to the pits and Gary Gerould.
Paul, the concern over Emerson Fittipaldi early was with brakes. The brakes have cooled somewhat. The improvement apparently is there because Emerson has not been complaining about that on the radio. But the concern of the crew now is they're seeing a very steady and expected rise in temperatures relating to water. And that's what everybody had feared. And it varies in traffic, and maybe Bob or Sam can address how it changes when you get in traffic and you don't get the airflow into the radiators to try to cool down those temperatures.
Bobby Unser?
Well, one of the biggest problems is we don't even have a breeze today, and all the air sits down in between these two rows of cement, and each time the cars go around it gets a little bit hotter. Another thing about the Penske cars that are different from the Lola cars is they use a heat exchanger, Paul, which is a way that the oil transfers its heat to the water, and the water transfers its heat out via a radiator. So a heat exchanger as opposed to an oil cooler with the Lolas. Now, if that doesn't make enough sense, I'll be glad to explain it more. But often the heat exchangers don't run quite as cool.
And here on a hot day, temperatures in the 90s in downtown Denver, it makes a world of difference. And there is Roberto Guerrero, some blue vapor at the back of the car. It appears that that machine may be in trouble. He was running in 9th place when he last crossed over the start-finish line, and now he rolls to a stop in what most definitely would appear to be the end of the day.
Well, it's a blown engine. There's no question about that. You can just see that smoke's coming out as both oil and water. The bad news that the driver doesn't want to know about.
The yellow flag that you see waving there is for the local situation. It would not be a full course yellow, so we would not see a closing up. Al Unser, in other words, who you see here on the left of the screen, his lead will be protected by this situation.
Al Unser Jr. runs out in front and has a solid advantage over second place Emerson Fittipaldi. This week, Al Unser Jr. will have an opportunity to test his brand new car, the Galmer chassis. We asked him about it.
The expectations are, I hope that it runs quicker than the Lola. I think that's the first thing that we need to do, and the main reason why that is because the majority of my competitors are in Lola chassis, and you know, nothing is better than a mechanical advantage over your competition, and so we strive for that kind of deal, and now we've got the new car. Hopefully it'll do that first, and then we'll see how the reliability is of it.
So that new car, there's his wife Shelley. The car is available to him. I suspect, Bobby Unser, that Bobby Rahal's failure here today will affect some of that car's testing schedule, because wouldn't it have been logical for Gallus to say, hey, let's use that car toward the end of the year once we're way ahead in points?
No, they won't do that. They can't afford to. They've already shown it to the public and, of course, to the other racers to some degree. They can't let everything out on that car and show it around the racetrack, and it's going to take a while to develop it. It's very seldom that a car is good right off the bat, number one. Number two, just think how much Rick Gallus must have spent to try to give little Alan Rahal a mechanical advantage. It's probably costing him many millions of dollars to build that car.
Al Unser Jr. with a new car coming and no traffic to handle for the moment, but Michael Andretti has just passed Scott Pruitt for 5th place and puts him up in the order as he continues to charge. Back in Denver on a very warm day, as throughout the field there are some nice little fights. This one not for position, but Scott Pruitt just had to handle up Scott Brayton, and just behind Scott Brayton now is Buddy Lazier and then Willie T. Ribbs. Willie Ribbs is running in 7th place and trying to catch up to the 6th place Scott Pruitt, but he does have 2 cars in between himself and Pruitt as he tries to make up the position. At the front of the field is Al Unser Jr. He is being chased, though not closely, by Emerson Fittipaldi. Mario Andretti is up and running in 3rd place right now. And there you see Willie T get past quite smoothly. Michael Andretti runs in 5th place behind 4th place Eddie Cheever. Then Scott Pruitt and Willie T. Ribbs, the battle that is developing here and now.
Well, it's a good battle, and you wouldn't tell any difference between that and a 1st place and a 2nd place fight, Paul. But the race is not over. Still got a long ways to go. If these guys didn't race like that, they wouldn't look so good at the end of the year. And a lot of people, car owners, sponsors, everybody are looking at these drivers right now, especially like Buddy Lazier right there. He's new.
As they keep track of Al Unser Jr. and the Gallus Craco pits. The other story that we've started at the beginning of this show, and we'll keep an eye on Sam Posey, is Michael Andretti, who tangled with Bobby Rahal, had trouble getting restarted, had that terrible problem with his tire, but got going again. You ride with him now, and as you do so, you ride in 5th place. So Michael Andretti is trying to carve his way back up through this field and get as many points as he possibly can. If possible, perhaps he'd like to challenge Al Unser Jr. for the lead once again. We're past the halfway point. 43 laps are complete. Al Unser Jr. still leads. Danny Sullivan with something burning at the back of his car. You can see that black smoke. That indicates there's a fire there. And Sullivan ready to abandon the cockpit. He just had a stop-and-go penalty. He's trying to wave the fire crews over to give him a hand and get the fire out on that car.
That's the paint burning. The paint first started burning, and now, of course, the body, the carbon fiber type material in the body is burning. It's from heat. And when you stop it that quick, I may have blown an engine or something. We don't know about that. But when you stop that quick, the fire just goes, or the heat just goes right to the paint, and it just explodes with fire.
So Danny Sullivan helps the firefighters protect his own race car. And of course, the faster you get that fire out, the more parts in there. And since all those parts are real expensive, you want to get it out quickly.
Well, Paul, ironically, the hood could cost them easily $20,000. So every second would count on that. It would pretty soon become a deal of dollars and cents.
What an ideal moment. It's a full course yellow. Al Unser Jr., you saw the hoses out ready for his pit stop. Here's a break definitely in favor of the leader.
Well, as they go full course yellow now, with Danny Sullivan's problem on the course, here is the man that benefits, Al Unser Jr., as he rolls down the pit road. And Al Unser Jr. has a solid lead in this race, a full 41 seconds over Emerson Fittipaldi as he rolls in now. The rest of the cars in the field taking advantage as well. The pit stop, it appears to be routine, an extra special precautionary check to make sure there are no debris in the coolers that are so critical here. Rick Mears is in the pits as well as he makes his stop. It is 16.3 seconds in and out for little Al as he comes out alongside of Rick Mears. Danny Sullivan's car, totally disabled now, sits by the edge of the course, and that, of course, is the reason for the full course yellow.
Well, we almost saw Rick leaving the pits again. Paul, little Al was passing Emerson Fittipaldi, and you could tell Emo still doesn't have a lot of rear brakes because he locked up the brakes. The camera went away just right then.
Danny's situation, as we go back just a few laps and review it, suddenly Danny came off the line and began slowing down. Sullivan, remember, with that Alfa Romeo power, and he got punched.
Well, he did. He had no power. The car right behind him really didn't think that he was going to slow down like that. And, of course, in anticipation of Danny accelerating, he accelerated and punched him a little bit.
Any idea who that was that came up behind him there?
I couldn't see it, Paul.
Very difficult to tell. Nevertheless, you've got Danny Sullivan with one very expensive car covered now in that chemical powder that helps fight the fires, and the kart safety team is there with a little extra light water on the car to make sure the fire is out.
Often on road circuits, something like it'll happen, especially a really tight one like here in Denver, when you really kind of have to anticipate what the other driver's going to do so you can react to it. Otherwise, you couldn't stay very competitive with it, and that's what happened. He was coming off the turn, Danny lost his power, and kaboom, he punched him. But Danny already had problems anyway.
So Mario Andretti, there he circles in third place now. The lineup under this full course yellow, and it'll take him a little bit for the field to gather up behind Johnny Rutherford's PPG pace car, is Al Unser Jr., then Emerson Fittipaldi, then Mario Andretti, and then Eddie Cheever. Then Michael Andretti runs in fifth place. Let's take another look here, see if we can figure out exactly what happened. Bobby Unser.
Well, you can just watch Danny going inside. If it looks like Rick Meals there. Rick Mears, and there comes the car behind him, of which I can't tell by the color who it is. But right there, he just barely punched Danny right in the rear end. Wasn't a hard hit, just a little bit too much. The car right behind us to the left now was still locking up his brakes an awful lot.
Looked to be Michael Andretti that came up there so quickly, and the question of whether or not he actually touched Danny Sullivan, it sure looked like it from here. 46 laps are now complete of the 70 laps scheduled here in the Texaco Havoline Grand Prix of Denver, and Al Unser Jr. leads it. We'll be back after this message and a word from our ABC stations. Under a full course caution at Denver, Colorado in the Texaco Havoline Grand Prix of Denver. The Texaco cars, in fact, Michael Andretti with just a smudge of black on the nose of his car, which could in fact indicate some contact with a car of Danny Sullivan. Now this is the onboard camera from Michael as he is chasing up, and you see he touched Danny Sullivan's left rear wheel.
Yes, he did, and that mark we see on his nose is a little bit of rubber right from Danny's left rear tire, which really and all didn't hurt anything. It didn't hurt Michael, didn't bend anything, and certainly Danny was already out of the picture.
So you don't think any damage there?
No, there's no damage there. You can just see it. One little tiny spot, got a little smoke.
All right, one car that you may notice missing from this lineup is the number 14 A.J. Foyt's car, to be driven here by Mike Groff. And Mike Groff was involved in an accident here in the practice. A.J. had not entered his backup car, and so the rules prevented them going to the backup car and running Groff or another driver, though the medical indication might have been that Groff couldn't drive that car. But it also was a worrisome moment, Sam.
Well, I think what happened, Paul, is that they just didn't have the second car entered. Without the second car entered, they were able to tell Foyt he couldn't run it, so they couldn't do the thing. But they also said that if the field had not been full of cars, that he could have run the second car. Now that looks to me like to be a little bit of contradiction of rule reading.
Yeah, it seems a shame that especially a young competitor like Groff, trying to make a name for himself with AJ's car, couldn't make it in. You see now the cars that are out of the field as we've completed our race summary here, and we continue to roll around this course with our second full caution of the day, and all of the cars in the field have now completed their pit stops. This is Michael. Let's take a look at it one more time.
There he's coming there behind Danny Sullivan. Look at the smoke out of Danny's car. You can see he's just blowing his engine or something. Then you saw an increase of smoke just on the left rear. That was when Michael's nose went right into the middle of his left rear tire. And again, it really wasn't a big factor, or not really wasn't hurting anything.
You know, you mentioned the controversy surrounding Foyt's car, and of course the controversy about the 2 pit stops here at Denver and the moving of the track and a lot of other things. It's the middle of the season, and a lot of ill feeling is blowing around the pits. I hate to see it because I think this is a marvelous racing series with established stars, a great series of races all through the season, and I wish people would put a positive spin on what we're seeing.
The field now trying to pack up behind the pace car led by the number 1 car of Al Unser Jr. He won this race last year. He's been spectacular on the streets as the pace car now pulls off into the pit area, and Little Al picks the pace up with Fittipaldi right behind him, and Michael Andretti running in 3rd place in what should be a marvelous run to the finish now as the green flag comes out.
Well, Little Al is in the lead. Fittipaldi's right behind. Now we know that Emerson doesn't have the brakes. Look at Mario coming underneath him. Now there's nothing Emo can do on that. Mario was going to go on by because Emo has front brakes and he just can't help himself.
So Al Unser Jr. picks up the lead of the race once again. And sitting right behind him now is Michael Andretti.
Let me just straighten that out, Paul. That was Rick Mears, but it was the same. Both of the Penske cars have had rear brake problems, but Rick just wasn't able to get into the turn with Mario because of the rear brake spoiling the foot problem.
Right, well, it's not too difficult to become confused here because that is Michael just behind Little Al, but he is 1 lap off the pace despite the fact that he runs back down in the order in 5th place. Let's go down to the pits now. Danny Sullivan has made it back.
Well, Paul, we saw several parts of Danny Sullivan, part-time volunteer fireman and also the object of a drop kick, but you say that what we saw is not really what happened.
Well, what happened was right before the corner onto the start-finish line, my engine seized up, and I turned in there, and Michael was right behind it, and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get out of the way, and I think he just, punted me a little bit. I don't think it was anything severe. I barely felt it, but I was more concerned about getting the car stopped, and I saw that it was on fire, was getting it out.
Now, one of the problems, though, with this temporary course is all the chain link fence, and the corner worker had to run all the way back to get the fire extinguisher.
Well, he had to go down to an opening to be able to get out onto the track, and he could see what was going on, but he just couldn't get through the fence.
Paul?
Of course, that's one of the problems with temporary circuits as Michael Andretti comes inside of Al Unser Jr. and gets his lap back. So Michael Andretti now is back on the leader lap once again and runs in 5th place. 2nd place is Emerson Fittipaldi. You don't see him in the picture. He runs about 7 seconds back. Be careful not to confuse him with the number 3 car of Rick Mears. They're very much alike, but of course Fittipaldi is carrying number 5. Mario Andretti runs in 3rd place, and he is about 3 seconds back behind Fittipaldi.
Yes, Paul, and plus he has an entire lap to come around to get behind little Al, of which, normally speaking, unless they have another full course yellow, couldn't happen. But that's the things that makes it so interesting. We just had one full course yellow. They could conceivably have another one. Little Al doesn't like to lose the advantage that he had of having a full lap.
Well, of course, if you would see another full course yellow, that would serve the advantage of Michael Andretti, who would come around and catch up with the leaders. And Scott Brayton gets into the wall hard. A lot of damage to the front end, and this may be, I think, most certainly that full course yellow.
And Mario Andretti is involved. We're suddenly aboard Mario Andretti's car here, too. He was involved in that incident.
Shaking his head in disappointment. Mario Andretti definitely involved in that one.
Well, he's out. Well, there he is. You can see it. The whole left front is knocked off his car. That's the reason he was shaking his head. He's definitely out of the race. He's had too many confrontations today for that car to make it anymore.
The car looked so good when we could see only the right side.
This is like a 24-man prize fight today. Everybody has had contact with everybody else.
But let's try to remember now that
take a look at this. Here is Scott Brayton. As he loses his brakes, ricochets off the wall, and Mario gets into him. A couple of real hard hits for Scott Brayton.
Boy, Scott Brayton hit with his left rear, bounced right across in front of Mario. There wasn't a thing that Mario could have done, no matter what he have done. It was going to be a bad collision. And boy, they shed a lot of parts off those cars there.
Well, Mario climbs out of the car. Scott Brayton is already out of his. Let's try and take a look at this situation. Look at the terrible damage on that car. Let's look and let's just listen to this situation. Two extraordinarily hard hits as Brayton loses some braking, gets into the wall, comes off the wall, and then Mario breaks into him. His car heavily damaged. So now, with a full course yellow, just as we were talking about, Michael Andretti comes up, cycles up behind the leaders, and we're going to have a race.
Yeah, and if nothing else, Mario's demise gives Michael another position and 2 more points in the championship.
Now, as you watch Scott Brayton going in there, and we watch that wreck again, he lost his rear end going into the turn under braking, and he just never could get the car slowed down enough to get a hold of it and get the handling back again. Hitting the wall, bounced right in front of Mario. There's nothing that Mario could do.
Dick Simon's team was looking for a great deal out of this car. This is the same situation from on board Mario's car. Now watch them as they head down into the corner. We'll just watch and ride with Mario.
Now, the camera didn't show an awful lot because obviously the hit was on the left, but it was a bad hit, and boy, you could tell by the sound. Could you ever hear that much sound, that much crash?
Also, but what you could see so clearly there was that the view of Scott Brayton was blocked. In other words, Mario himself could not see Brayton going into the wall ahead. That's the sort of double jeopardy a driver gets involved with.
And it's one of those situations. Mario is exiting the corner on line. He can't turn any tighter in. The car is just suddenly in front of him, and bang, Mario is right into him. Let's take a look again. We'll just ride with him. So with that situation, we are now under full course yellow once again. Al Unser Jr. is the leader of the race under the caution. 52 laps are complete. Emerson Fittipaldi is second, and Michael Andretti once again has a chance. We'll be back. We're back in Denver under a full course yellow. We are riding for the moment, looking right in the face of Jeff Andretti as we go down through the order for you. But the critical fact here is the first 4 cars down through Michael Andretti are all running on the same lap. And yes, when the yellow came out for the Mario Andretti Scott Brayton accident, Michael Andretti was able to come all the way around and close up behind the leaders, bringing himself in 4th place and in contact with the leader of the race, Al Unser Jr. So with the few remaining laps that we have, this should be one whale of a fight. Al Unser Jr. and Rick Gallus, they share much more than just an owner-driver relationship. So now let's go back and take a much closer look at Team Gallus. Both prefer life here in the vastness of New Mexico. It is here that a pioneer spirit prevails. A brash, tough spirit. A zeal for life and friendship. Here is Albuquerque, where the Unser's racing exploits are legend. First Bobby, then Al, and now Junior. And the name Gallus is business and civic leadership. Both share a fierce pride in this rugged land. And it is here in Albuquerque that Rick and Al live side by side as partners.
It's really a pretty place, really a pretty building that we got planned. But, you know, a cowboy walks around with a small voice or silent with a big stick. And that's pretty much how I see Rick and the race team. You know, we don't go out and talk about going fast or talk about going slow or talk about much of anything. We go out there and just do it, and whatever happens, happens, and we try to learn from it.
We're kind of from New Mexico. We want to look sharp and be aggressive. We're proud of our heritage, and we can't wait to get after you. You know, we're aggressive, and you'll know where we stand right away, and that's kind of the way people from our part of the country are.
Rick's family arrived in the late 1800s. They worked hard and prospered, selling cars to the westward bound. The Unsers arrived in the middle of the Great Depression. The land and circumstance forged a tough character. Rick and the slim Carrot Top Kid began to race. The thrill of winning brought the two partners even closer together. As partners, they share everything, the good times, the pain, even the same birthday.
Al Jr. is not just a friend of mine. He drives for me, and he's a great competitor. And I've always approached all of my businesses with the concept that you need to be friends with those people you work with. If you're not, you can't get into the emotion of what you do.
What Rick and Al do best is race Indy cars. Last year was a reflection of their combined approach to life. Early successes overcoming great obstacles. The fire at Cleveland scorched the heart of their racing family. But just like a cowboy after a fall, they slapped the dust of pain and climbed back on the winning trail. They clinched the championship at the moment Al hit the wall at Nazareth. For Rick and Al, it has never been easy. Even their successes are mirrored in symbols of the West, a silver belt buckle inscribed with each victory. But the most important one is missing. 2 years ago, they were just 3 miles away.
A drag race on the backside again. Slower traffic moves to the right. Can Fittipaldi get past? Little Al brings it down low. They touch. Little Al into the wall. Fittipaldi continues on. Little Al slams the wall.
Away from the roar, they spend time in the tranquility of their homes, searching for the magic of racing wins. Call it an obsession or dedication. For these partners, it is the only way to race, and they love every minute of it. Right now, they more than love being in the lead of the race. Al Unser Jr., car number 1, looking perhaps at 2 in a row here at Denver. But there is a great deal yet to come. We'll be back. Still run under the full course caution here at the Texaco Havoline Grand Prix of Denver. And there is Michael Andretti. You see him at the back of the order as the pace begins to pick up. His job will be to cut through all of those in front of him, come up to the front and do battle with that man, car number 1, Al Unser Jr. Emerson Fittipaldi comes to the line in second. Eddie Cheever is third. And then Michael Andretti as the green flag comes out once again with 56 of the 70 laps complete.
Well, you can watch little Al right there at the start. He lost it a little while ago to Michael. He lost that lap. He's dead serious now. At that start, he really got the jump. He's going to take off and try to put some distance on Michael. Forget his insurance policy back again, Paul.
The 5-car, Emerson Fittipaldi, has his closest competitor, Eddie Cheever, just behind him. And if he is to stay in contact with the leader, he has to get around his own teammate, Rick Mears, and Scott Pruitt, who sat just in front of him.
Yes, the guys are all vying really hard for position right now, because the starts is where you can gain the most, but it's usually where you have the most problems as far as small accidents go.
Cheever is staying right there with Emerson Fittipaldi as Fittipaldi and Cheever come by Pruitt and now have only Rick Mears to handle up if they're going to get back in touch with the leader. And I suspect as soon as Rick sees that it's his teammate behind him, he will be very careful about giving way to that following car.
The drivers have all seen each other at close quarters throughout this race and have a good idea what the other strengths and weaknesses are. So they've made book. There it comes. The pass by Emerson Fittipaldi of his teammate Rick Mears. A nice clean pass, as you might expect, between two intelligent teammates.
And Mears slides in just ahead of the combatant with Fittipaldi, Eddie Cheever. But Mears did try to give him some racing room as they came through the corner. He comes wide again.
And Eddie Cheever really tried to get in there along with Emo, because he knew right there he got him.
Eddie Cheever's got him, but Scott Pruitt really had to get on the brakes for that maneuver as Rick got into the corner just a little slow to let Cheever have the position.
Well, as soon as we saw the smoke come off the front tires, we thought, well, there's going to be another wing gone, another front wing.
At the same time, over on the inside, Willie T. Ribbs and Scott Pruitt are at it, and they are also, by the way, racing for position. They are racing for 5th place, though a lap down from the leaders of the race, so that is a battle as well. Right now, Scott comes inside of Rick Mears, and that battle breaks off for the moment. So Al Unser Jr. still leads it. We watch Scott Pruitt and Willie T. Ribbs, and Jack has an update.
Well, Paul, if it's not bad enough that you got to contend with Willie T. Ribbs, how about having to contend, as Scott Pruitt does, with an overheating engine? During that caution period, the water temperature just began to peg, go right up by the peg. I checked with Steve Horn. He says we need to get as much clean air as possible to make that jet engine last.
Jack, you speculated that might be a problem.
Yeah, we thought, Jack, that we saw Scott Pruitt earlier zigzagging, trying to get clear air wherever he could, even though it placed him at a disadvantage in terms of where he approached the turns from. So it's obviously a problem they've had for some time.
Now, the only thing he can really do to help that right now is, like we see him, he runs off to the side a little bit to get more air in his radiators, and he can short shift, don't turn quite as much RPM with the engine.
Scott Pruitt runs up right behind Eddie Cheever, who is in fact the 3rd place car at this moment. Eddie Cheever's brother Ross, by the way, who lives in Japan and races in Formula 3000, is in the pits watching Eddie today, and I think hoping that maybe he will see a ride in the Indy cars very shortly. At the top of the order, it is still Al Unser Jr., then Fittipaldi, then Cheever, then Michael Andretti is now trying to work his way up through this field.
Well, Michael's having a lot of traffic to go through, and he's having a hard time with it. You know, the racetrack is slippery. The tires have been abused very hard. It's just hard to pass these cars that fast.
Yeah, but look how far he's come, as Michael is now right up behind Rick Mears and already passed some of, well, a good number of cars, because he started in the back of the order. So Michael Andretti, perhaps the fastest car on the circuit at this moment.
Interesting, as we saw Rick Mears deferring to another driver. It's funny how very different the races are one to another in this kart series. Only a couple of weeks ago, we saw Rick Mears just dominating the race at Michigan, the big 500-mile race on the big bank track. Now, of course, very different kind of competition. And in order to win the championship, the kart championship, you must truly be versatile.
Michael Andretti driving for all he's worth now as he works his way up through the field. Gary Gerald, you have an update.
Well, Paul, one of the reasons Michael might be making that progress through the traffic, he darted in just before the green came out, got a half turn on the right front wing, trying to affect the handling characteristics of the car. Apparently, it's responded well for this stretch run. Remember, just minutes ago, he was a lap down, and they were just biding time, trying to collect points. Now they think they've got a shot to possibly still get up and challenge.
Eddie Cheever just turned in a blistering lap at 92.9 miles an hour, a full mile an hour faster than anyone else at the top of the racing order here. So there is Cheever as he's flying. Just behind him is Pruitt, and just behind him is Michael Andretti as Michael comes up to challenge Scott Pruitt. And now Michael Andretti is in direct contact with 3rd place all the way from the back. He is now just behind Cheever and carving his way up.
Now let's always keep in mind yellow flags, any yellow flag, even though Michael's on the same lap, he's just about to pass. He's just about to pass Cheever there.
He made contact again.
Michael, driving for all he's worth, comes right up and taps at the back of Eddie Cheever's car.
Well, we know Michael still has a chance to win this race. It's just totally possible. He just can't drive any harder. It's typically the same way he's driven all year. And he's really chasing it hard.
And the point is, if you think he's being too aggressive, hey, wait a minute, take a couple of laps to get by Cheever. He can't afford to do that if what he's thinking is win. He's got to get by Cheever now, and that's why he gambled as much as he did.
But Sam, you can't say Eddie Cheever's giving it up. Boy, look at that, Eddie. I've never seen Eddie Cheever drive this hard since he's been in kart racing.
Eddie Cheever definitely can hustle a car, is doing so now, as both of them are traveling incredibly fast around this circuit. Michael closes in, Eddie Cheever protects the line, and remember, this is a point in the race on a very hot day in Denver in which their brakes are definitely fading. Their tires aren't as good as they can, so anything that they do when they run close like this has a very certain element of danger.
Of course. Now, of course, Michael no longer has the element of surprise. He's trying him down there on the inside.
They come in, they lock together, they almost hit.
That was incredible. Great driving by both
totally
men.
locked up there.
Yeah.
Both totally locked.
Remind you of going to a Saturday night midget race. The guys are running these race cars, these Indy cars, I think harder than we've ever seen on a street court. Bumping, a little bit of banging, and it's been going on constantly all day.
Michael Andretti was willing in that maneuver to put his fate in the hands of Eddie Cheever. He took that chance. That's what winning the race means. There are times when you just can't wait indefinitely for something to happen, an opportunity to open up. So he just drove down inside, and if Eddie Cheever had just turned into him, that would have been it for both of them.
And now with just 10 laps in this race to go, perhaps most important for Michael Andretti, he's picked up 2 more points and is now only 9 behind Bobby Rahal. But now he has his sights set on Emerson Fittipaldi and Al Unser Jr. Little Al leads the race. Fittipaldi is second.
It's a good idea on how things can change and how a driver should, or an athlete should just never give up. It looked earlier in the day like Michael was totally out of the picture, going to finish somewhere way back in the pack, and right now he's in second place, and little Al, believe it or not, is worried about him coming up.
Well, Sam Posey, you mentioned it right at the start. He's made his announcement. He knows where he's going to be for another year. Even as important, the team knows that they're all going to be together for another full season, and that buoys the spirit. Even though he went well down with the problems that he's had, here he is back battling at third place.
Well, exactly. I talked to his wife, Sandy, and I said, well, you know, will this help him to concentrate even more on the races now that he doesn't have the pressure of all those transatlantic negotiations going on? Here's Sandy here. She said, geez, more concentration at the races? That's impossible. He already concentrates 100%. If I want to talk to him, I have to hit him over the head with a 2x4. But the point is, the team around him now realizes he's going to be with them, not just through the rest of this year, but all next year. So it's not a lame duck last few races, and I think that makes a tremendous difference.
At the moment, none of the cars in the top of the order are in contact with one another. Al Unser Jr. leads it. Emerson Fittipaldi is trying to close, as is Michael Andretti. But Al Unser Jr. is setting a blistering pace with the full course yellows. He's not running as fast as he did last year. The average only 68.4 miles an hour. But still, he is pulling away from the rest of the field. Fittipaldi, you just get a glimpse of him there, is closing in and trying to catch up on that #1 car. Al Unser Jr., well, he's looking at a very possible 2 races in a row, winning the only 2 races ever held here in the downtown of Denver, Colorado. Let's go back. This is when Michael Andretti was closing on Eddie Cheever.
Well,
that was the target just in front of him.
He's very lucky that he didn't suffer suspension misalignment there.
Well, that both of them were able to keep the thing under control.
Yeah.
You wonder sometimes how many times they can do that. Look at him lock up his brakes, totally going in. You can even see as the tire gathered up the other rubber from the racetrack.
And look at how quickly he counterattacked, too. He did not let that contact put him off. Just half a lap later, he made the move that carried him through.
Michael Andretti, perhaps by driving the finest drive of his life, in third place, trying to catch Emerson Fittipaldi. The leader of the race is Al Unser Jr. It's been a long, hot afternoon here in Denver, but this race is most definitely not over yet, with those first 4 cars still battling with one another. We'll be right back. Jr. in the lead, but look right behind him. In fact, just 2 seconds back. That's Emerson Fittipaldi. And Fittipaldi has turned the last couple of laps just a tiny bit faster than Al Unser Jr., though that last lap turned in by both at 88.6 miles an hour. but Little Al is very definitely aware that Fittipaldi is there. Don't forget, coming up next, there's more speed and endurance on the roadways in Watkins Glen, New York, as the world's finest auto racing legends come together for the final round of the International Race of Champions. That's the round that, of course, determines the overall champion. Al Unser Jr. leads, Fittipaldi second, Michael Andretti trying to make up. But at the moment, it's a most difficult job. He is well back in the order. But Fittipaldi is the factor at the moment as he tries to catch. Though on the last lap, he fell off about 0.6 of a second from Little Al. This is Tony Bettenhausen with a really brilliant run here today. Doing a nice job. Runs in 10th place. Let me run through the top of the order as we watch Tony for you. Al Unser Jr., Fittipaldi, Michael, that's a given. Eddie Cheever. They are all on the same lap. One lap down is Scott Pruitt and Willie Ribbs. Then John Andretti. Then Rick Mears. Then Buddy Lazier. And then Tony Bettenhausen rounds off the top 10, followed by John Jones, Jeff Andretti, Jeff Wood, Hiro Matsushita, and those are the cars that are all running at this moment. Surprisingly enough, most of the field within 1 or 2 laps of the leader, and 4 cars running with this man, Al Unser Jr., the leader of the race.
It says, by the way, on the side of the cockpit, just near where Al Unser Jr. is sitting, it says Visit New Mexico in very small letters. So he is promoting his state as you see Emerson Fittipaldi closing in or maintaining station behind him. You know, I think one of the significant things that we are seeing today is there are 2 really great young road course drivers in this country right now. Al Unser Jr., Michael Andretti. We've seen a great confrontation between them today. Obviously, we expect to see a lot more of this. Both men are committed to this series. We're going to see, as fans, there's a lot to look forward to in the next few years.
One thing that this race certainly does is brings out the possibility of tourism here in Denver. And as we've pointed out, a race downtown like this is very difficult. This is right in the center of Denver, right in front of the state capitol building. It takes a great deal from a city and state administration to be able to pull something like this off. While they're thinking of moving it, I think all of us hope that they don't.
Well, I kind of wish they didn't do, Paul, but I think they're going to. Here's a guy right here, Emerson Fittipaldi, who is just as stubborn a race driver and a harder charger as I've ever seen. Now, he's trying very hard. We know his brakes are not really good, and he's trying very hard to get up on Little Al, and he's going to push him, trying to break him right now. That's his whole idea, is to push him so hard that he makes a mistake.
He has 1 road course win to his credit this year. That was in Detroit, a course a lot like that. This one, he's been second twice on similar courses, both times behind Michael Andretti.
Well, Al Unser Jr. runs in front with Fittipaldi there. In fact, Little Al just got around the 86 car of Jeff Andretti, putting a bit of a separation. This was just a few seconds ago as Rick Mears lost some braking as Cheever turned in alongside Lazier and took the left front wing assembly off of the car. Lazier was able to keep rolling down the track. Obviously, he's not injured, but some tight racing in that situation with Cheever and Rick Mears.
Cheever was looking at Mears and not at Lazier, an understandable error, but that turn once again has claimed another victim.
Other winners here at Denver in the Indy Lights, P.J. Jones, Herb Hare won in the Trans Am, and in the Escort World Challenge, Doc Bundy took the win. A special thanks to Fran Leonard, John Leonard, Jeff Dickerson, Greg Fielding, and Jeremy Shaw, who have helped us with the statistical information here in the booth throughout all of our ABC races this year. Now running right with the leaders, 12th place, Jeff Andretti. He's the one difference in an Andretti helmet. He has that big J on his helmet. He's an individualist.
Otherwise, we can't tell the difference, Paul.
Emerson Fittipaldi. There you see the distance between he and the first place car. Now with just 4 laps to go.
Emerson, Ayrton Senna, of course, won the Belgian Grand Prix today, extending his lead in the World Championship. We thought that today, if Bobby Rahal were to win this race, we'd have a similar situation with a man way out front. Not so. We now have a very, very tight battle for the CART Championship.
With Bobby Rahal falling out, not scoring a point here today, it definitely closes the points fight up. Roger Penske keeping track of his driver, Fittipaldi, as well as Rick Mears.
Well, you can watch that poker face on Roger Penske. He just looks like he's emotionless. He doesn't have any emotions at all. It's all business with Roger. His racing is probably the most serious of all the businesses that he's involved in.
Al Unser Jr. won here last year. On his way to victory now in the closing laps of this race. what has been a hard-fought battle for most of the competitors has, in fact, for Little Al, been a fairly smooth run.
Well, it has been a smooth run, except that Michael getting that free lap back, Emo all of a sudden getting a new breath of fresh air and pushing as hard as he can. I don't think he's ready for that, Paul.
Well, taking a look at these statistics, Al Unser Jr. certainly is a master on the streets, and Michael Andretti does very well as well.
What Al is able to do that so far Michael has not been able to do is run these races without making contact with anybody at all. Look at his car. It's completely clean. He has a real knack for taking chances when they pay off the most and not getting involved when they are not going to pay off.
An update on Little Al. Here's Jack Arute.
Paul, you're talking about what an effortless run it's been for Al Unser Jr. Probably the closest call came on that aborted start. He reported back to Rick Ellis and the crew that he literally got drop kicked on the start, but it didn't seem to cause any problems throughout the day.
Well, it certainly didn't, Jack, and you can see by the marks on his car, but we saw that that almost ended up being a big crash into that first turn of the people that didn't see it. It almost ended up being just like a junkyard of Indy cars down there because the track was blocked for a while.
Don't forget that throughout the season, there has been an ongoing pit stop competition. Not only will today's pit stops help determine the eventual winner of the event, but they'll also help to determine the final outcome of this year's $135,000 Texaco Haviland pit stop competition. And assuming that in the next 2 laps no one makes a stop, which is certainly not likely, Rick Mears will have scored 102 points and picked up $46,000 for the team. Al Unser Jr.'s team in second with 57 points and $33,000, and Michael Andretti's team with 56 points will pick up $24,500. That's the Texaco Haviland pit stop contest, which is final as the checkered flag comes out. Al Unser Jr. driving, picking up a point for driving the most and leading the most laps here in this race, and looking for 20 points as the winner.
Sometimes you can see the driver's emotions mirrored in the way his wife looks in the timing stand. And as we looked at Shelley Unser a moment ago, she was actually laughing. I think circumstances like this have become so familiar in that family. You think of the big lead, very similar situation that we had earlier this year at Long Beach. I think there's a lot of feeling that once Little Al gets out ahead, he is able to do what it takes to stay ahead. Even so, you see how close behind him right now Emerson Fittipaldi is.
Emerson Fittipaldi comes around Matsushita. By the way, that's the pronunciation that now Hiro himself has asked all the announcers to use. We know it's not the same pronunciation that the family uses or he uses in Japan, but it's what he wants. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Quick update on Emerson Fittipaldi, Paul. The brake temperatures from the telemetry that they have in the pits here indicate that those temperatures continue to rise in the late stages. Emerson has been doing a remarkable job, they feel, stalking Little Al as he has in these final laps, but the temperatures keep going up, and that means the effectiveness of those brakes has to keep going away.
And we got a good example of that as Emerson smoked the tires, even as you were talking, Gary.
It just shows, Paul, that no matter what, if Emo had to try to pass Little Al right now, he'd have to do it under braking, and he just doesn't have enough rear brakes to do it. He can keep up with Little Al, but he can't seem to do it with the braking.
Which means, of course, that he would have a very hard time overtaking him. Tactically, he's in a very weak position.
White flag has been given to Little Al. Fittipaldi trying to close in. He's closed down considerably in the last 2 laps. He was back 2.9 seconds behind. Now he is just 2 seconds last time they came across the line. And Fittipaldi is most definitely closing in.
He never quits. He's just like a bulldog. He's about one of the hardest chargers that we have in racing today. The hardest chargers, and he just won't quit. He won't quit until he goes across the finish line, wherever he is.
And one of the finest gentlemen in the sport, hoping to open an IndyCar circuit down in his home country of Brazil in the next couple of years.
You know, physically, Paul, he's probably in the best shape of any of the drivers here. He works out almost every day.
Emerson Fittipaldi chases Al Unser Jr. to the final turn of this track, but the checkered flag will be waiting for Little Al as Fittipaldi slides it off the final corner, and here comes Al Unser Jr. with back-to-back wins in Denver. Al Unser Jr. has taken the win. It means that we will leave here with Bobby Rahal still leading the points with 141, but Michael Andretti with a third place finish has closed up to 132 points, just 9 back from Al Unser Jr., who now has 129 points. So that's the top of the order. Al Unser Jr. takes the win. The race has run just a little bit long. We're not going to be able to talk to Little Al, but